Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
The style of play that you guys use or played with, obviously you have some super talented players, but I was amazed at how well the ball moved through with all the talent that you had. What's your favorite style of play to teach, and how did this year's team that you had, how did they use it?
Yeah, I didn't really know what my favorite style to teach would be until about August. I said ran the triangle in college and had a lot of different things that got to run overseas. And Carson Cunningham took a lot of stuff kind of from the NBA, and Griff Aldrich is running ball screen stuff. Andre, runs great motion offense, and so each guy that I was working for at the time, I was like, oh yeah, I like that. I'd probably do that. And we got here to Second Baptist and realized that I really enjoy trying to figure out how to help the talent on our team, create the advantage and keep the advantage. And so it became pretty simple when I watched Reese Alston bring the ball off of a ball screen and have some guys like Shia Francis and Michael Pratt and Will Goolsby around, and was like, okay, we're probably going to be some ball screening and spread the floor, and what do we do once we get the advantage? That was the fun part to teach was, how are we moving off the ball? And we had some really unselfish guys, and so when you got, like you said, you got guys that can shoot it and they're unselfish. It's a fun style to play, and I grew up going to a lot of the Spurs games during their heyday, and you'd see all those highlights of 4, 5, 6 passes in a possession, and just trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we kind of recreate that in our own little identity? And we had guys that said they just shared the ball really well, and we tried to give them some freedom to do it. So I don't know if it was so much me as just trying to give them a little bit of guideline and structure and then let them play.
I think that's huge though, because you have a lot of influences, and like you said, like, man, I like how we're doing it. Maybe I'll do it like that. But the danger sometimes is picking a style of play that doesn't necessarily fit the group that you have right now. You can be so rigid in a system. I'm a system guy. This is what we do. Well, what if it really doesn't fit this group? So I think having an open mind like you did to try something and see it and then watch how the pieces work together. I see a lot of wisdom in that. Watching your team play, one thing, and I kind of made a little note about it, was you played a lot of guys and you subbed guys in and out. And again, this is only one game that I watched you play. So if you weren't doing this normally, it was just because of Grace Prep or whatever, then that makes sense. You can tell me that. But what did you have a subbing or a set rotation that included short stints for guys in and out? Because when your best players were coming off the floor, man, they didn't look upset. They didn't react in a negative way. It looked like this is how we've been rotating and subbing. But I don't know, it jumped out at me.
No, yeah, that's kind of how we tried to play the whole year. I like playing a lot of guys. If you feel like the whole team is invested, I just felt, if you're going to do what we ask you to do in practice and exhibit a ton of effort and unselfishness, then I'm going to find ways to get you in, and you're going to get a chance to grow. And I guess the best story I can give you on our guys' mentality was in our first playoff game against Laredo St. Augustine. We had a senior who had started earlier in the year and done a great job for us. His name's Terrence Baylor, but wasn't starting later in the year. And he hadn't played in the first half. And, Reese Alston, who's first team All-State and, great player, he came over to me at the half and was like, hey, coach, just so you know, T hasn't gotten in yet. And I would sub him in for Reese a lot of times. And so, for a guy who's one of the best players out there to ask you that in the middle of a game, of a playoff game, it just kind of gives an indicator of how close our team was. So they're constantly cheering for each other. It made it easier for me to feel like I can sub these guys. They know they're going right back in, and we're trying to play at a really intense level on defense. I don't think we're quite there yet, but there were some good signs of it late in the year, and so if we're going to demand you play hard on defense every possession, then I'm going to go ahead and take you out, in a decent amount of parts of the game to keep you rested.
And where does that mentality come from that he has? Is that maybe you could say it's parenting? Maybe it's just him, or it's also a culture that you guys built? Because I don't think that I think that's pretty uncommon, especially from a super talented player like that, to zoom out enough to think about this other guy in like you said, in a playoff game. Where's that come from?
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on that I think it's a combination of just being in his DNA. It's who Reese is, but his mom and dad have done an incredible job. Um, they say the right things to him. He's got good people in his ear. He's just fun to be around. I think he loves being here, and um, he's got some great teammates too, and those guys have done a great job as well. So I think that it's probably a combination of the two.
Coming from more of a college background and with your playing experience, analytics are such a huge part of it. Well, how did you use those throughout this year, and how does that kind of not affect the style of play, but maybe even scouting and things that you're doing from game to game?
Yeah, I think well, we definitely did some really good stuff at Longwood with just defensive grading and accountability. Marty McGillen and Ronnie Thomas and obviously Griff spearheading that. That was a lot of fun to take that stuff and try to tweak it a little bit to who our team is. Longwood doesn't press. It's more kind of a trench warfare type of style on defense and dig your heels in and be great in the gaps. But we tried to do some accountability on defense, and obviously you can only manage what you measure, and so trying to figure out kind of our own little set of analytics. I think is it the Dean Oliver, what's it called, Basketball on Paper, that he talks about the four major advantages, whether it's shooting, rebounding, turnovers, and free throws. And so I don't know if this qualifies as analytics, but it was just how do we get those four things in as many drills as possible, and then how do we measure them in games, and are we boxing out at a level of like 80% or higher? I think those things kind of helped with the points per possession. And then when we get into practices, there's a lot of times where we would scrimmage and just try to measure the analytics side of it. Of are you getting 2 points for an offensive rebound? Are you getting is the game end after two turnovers? We stole some stuff from Baylor whenever they were doing that during their national championship run, and they'd play games to 5 points, just quick games. But if you turned it over, the game was over. If you fouled, it was 2 points. Like, we tried to do some of that stuff, and tweaked a little bit to our own identity.
So many good nuggets there. I'd love to know a little bit more about some of the defensive grading things that you've done in the past. Maybe some of those, the ones that you thought like this is really good, and we can see it paying off when they're playing. So that's one thing, and then also the constraints that you're talking about. Adding more value to different things, and I love the quote that you had about things getting measured. I think that's a challenge for every coach is like whatever you want to see more of, then give it a higher value in practice, make it worth more. And then the things that you don't want them to do, like make them pay for those actions, like the foul or the turnover is the game over. I think we can get more creative like that in games. So I'll just kind of let you go with that. Maybe some of the defensive grading stuff, and then just love the other part of it too.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, we're charting box outs and high hands on closeouts. I remember John Wooden being quoted of saying we're a few inches away from being a really good team, and I think a reporter wanted that clarified, and he basically was just saying if we're not closing out at a certain level, it changes our entire trajectory as a team. And then we'll track. There was another guy that we tried to steal some stuff from. Obviously, everybody's trying to steal from him. Crutchfield in Division II, doing a fantastic job, and he's got a huge tree now of coaches that are pressing all over the place. But there was a nugget about him timing guys sprinting out of their trap, and so we wouldn't do that for every single practice, but we might spend a practice and time a guy sprinting. And so he knows, like, it takes me 3 seconds to get free throw line to free throw line. And then when he's jogging 2 games later and we clip that up, we'll time him, and the team will kind of laugh if it took him 5 or 6 seconds to get free throw line to free throw line. There's not a whole lot you can argue about. So we try to chart some of that stuff. And then, just our ball screen defense, trying to figure out how do we grade that. Is there a way that we can, give guys if they were 3 out of 5 times in the ball screen, they guarded it correctly. And so, does that play into the grade that we give them at the end of the day? So we kind of played around with some of that stuff.
Does that feed into film and what you're choosing to watch? And are you watching long periods of film or smaller, shorter clips based on the things that you're grading?
And we try not to live in the film room. I think you lose them, I lose them at a certain point. So, but at the same time, you're also trying to fight a little bit of the just teenage attention spans. And so, we're not going to sit there and only watch 3 clips after a game, but we're also going to try to keep it to a minimum. And if we show the grading, reflect a little bit of that with 5 or 6 clips. And then, we really try to celebrate our guys, especially offensively. You are what you celebrate and tolerate. And so there needs to be a healthy balance there. And, we want our guys to see all the things they're doing correctly. So it takes a few clips, but man, if we get over about 20 clips, then we probably need to come back to it right after practice, or, show a few. Sometimes we'll get them up, have them change seats, but after about 20 minutes, I feel like it's really a struggle to keep them engaged. I don't know what you do.
Well, I think you're right on the money. It's so hard not to want to keep them in there for a long time, because to me, like, watching film is so much fun, and I love breaking down little parts to it. One AD I had said, Matt, you got to remember that we're the weirdos. Like, we're weird, not them. And so for them not to want to watch film for an hour, that's normal. They're kids, they're teenagers. And also, I think if our practices we want our practices to be a place where they can make mistakes, and we're going to teach them through that. I think film session has to be there too. And I mean, you and I probably both can remember those film sessions with coaches where we were getting yelled at, terrified. We felt like we were horrible. Man, I don't know if that really led to me learning a lot. And so Tyler Costin kind of talks about teaching through positive clips. Instead of grabbing the 3 or 4 things that were wrong that we want to work, man, do your due diligence and find the 3 or 4 clips of that action being right. And so group setting, it's teaching through the positives. And this is all I think you would agree is, like, as long as attitude and effort are where they need to be, because those are the attitude and effort. It's like breathing. You have to do it. But when we're teaching things, and then more of the negatives or the stretches is that great one-on-one time when you can bring them in. I think protecting our guys, not their egos, not like that, but I don't think players like to be embarrassed. And I think we can probably get more to, and you nailed it, like why are we doing these things in that one-on-one setting? So those are just some things that I thought about, but I love the direction that you took it with how the film connects to your analytics.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that it hits home probably better if you pick out, like, we'll have a guy that doesn't score a single point, but he blocked outright 5 times and sprinted the floor, and he's in the right spots, and you try to show 2 or 3 clips of him, and you're like, that's why that dude plays, man. And so, Hopefully after they've seen their grading and then they watch those clips of the guy doing it the right way, it sticks. And like you said, you're not always embarrassing a guy.
Yeah. And keeping it short, I do think you're right. And as much as we like to stay in there long, I don't know what the correct amount is. I mean, I've heard, 3 and 3, 3 positives, 3 that we need to get better at, 10 minutes or less as a good time stamp. If that's the case, if 10 minutes or less is good, then I fail all the time because it's rarely 10 minutes or less.
Yeah, and I guess one mistake I made early on was just not questioning enough, and talking at guys. And then, a few film sessions in, I'm like, these dudes are just listening to me ramble. Like, we've got to let them lead the film sessions once they know what we want. And we were able to get a little bit more time out of it because they'd start analyzing it and taking ownership of it. But it took me a minute to remember that.
Man, love that. And that's something I think that's a great activity to do and have those guys be prepared to do it, not on the spot. Another thing, and coach, I can't remember where I saw it. And that's what I love about like X or Instagram is following coaches, following people and just trying things out, like constantly borrowing things. But I saw a coach that was taking his film session and getting them in groups of 2. They each had a laptop and they're each taking short parts of film, breaking it down, writing down what they see. And then they had to come together with their 2 points that they had to share. And I thought, man, that's awesome. And so we groups of 2, you've got the first quarter, 4 minutes, first quarter, second 4 minutes, second quarter, and all the way through. And I want your 2 things that you saw that were positives and 2 stretches that we need to do. It was the most fun film session we've ever had. I learned a ton. It's kind of like when you ask your players for celebrations after a game. You may think you know what you saw or how they feel, but then you actually hear them celebrate and what they notice. Man, I just learned a ton from them. And I wish I could give the person credit that I saw that do, but that's another way
And
to
that's
do
great
that.
stuff.
I need to do it more. And that's something, it's kind of funny how like you can think of on a talk like this of some great things that we've done in the past. And then you realize, golly, like it's been a year. So, I mean, we did it once this year, but why not do that more? Why not bring them into the learning instead of, I mean, we don't want to spoon feed them. Like we want them to be solving problems on the floor. So let's help them do that.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.